All right, guys, let me be crystal clear. If you still think the U.S. is pulling back strategically, you seriously need to wake up. This isn't retreat. This is a gear shift. And the direction is obvious. Protect the homeland, lock down the Indo-Pacific, and tighten America's grip on the upstream control of energy and critical resources. Just yesterday, the U.S. released its latest national defense strategy, and it couldn't be more direct. The focus going forward is on two things: homeland security and the Asia-Pacific region. It also explicitly calls for strengthening deployments along the First Island chain. And here's the key line: allies are expected to take on more responsibility, pay more, do more, and carry more of the burden. In plain English, it's basically this: we set the rules and control the tempo. You cover the bill and take the front line. That's America first in its rawest, most honest form. All right, quick background. What's actually happening right now and why now? Over the past year, from Middle East to Europe, from Ukraine to the Arctic, the U.S. has been doing one thing consistently: connecting every hotspot into one big bargaining chain. Not with speeches, with leverage. A lot of people used to laugh and say, America doesn't understand how deals work. Come on, reality check. America understands deals better than anyone, and it plays the game like the strongest player at the table. In the Middle East, through so-called peace plans, the U.S. has been tying Arab countries and European interests into the same package. And the next step is obvious: keep using intelligence, influence, and interest trading to push the board in the direction Washington wants. America's goal is extremely clear. I'll sum it up in one sentence: control the resources, keep allies obedient, and choke the enemy where it hurts. Now here's the main point. America is targeting three big objectives right now, and one of the most sensitive is Greenland. Yeah, don't laugh. It looks like a frozen rock, but in reality, it's the strategic lock on the Arctic door. What's a U.S. best-case scenario for Greenland? Obviously, take it if possible. And let's be real. If you got a right-wing president, the idea of expanding territory isn't exactly off the table. But even the minimum standard is aggressive. Washington wants control. Washington wants the final say. And what does control and final say actually mean? It means the countries involved and the companies involved play by America's rules. It means U.S. forces get more freedom to deploy there. You want to mine? Invest? Build infrastructure? You do it with U.S. approval. No approval? Then you're out. And who's the deal being made with? Greenland, Denmark, and only after that do the European allies get in line. It's like the highway right outside your house. Whoever controls the toll booth controls the profit of the entire road. Now let's talk about the Russia-Ukraine situation. These past few days, Russia, the U.S., and Ukraine have been holding talks in Abu Dhabi. And if you're paying attention, you notice something important. Europe isn't even at the table. And it gets even more awkward. Zelensky went to Davos and basically trashed Europe in public. He said Europe is always fighting internally, always divided, never united, and not honest. Translation: Europe looks polished, but when it matters most, you can't rely on them. So the question is, where did Zelensky get the confidence to talk like that? Here's the thing: because he understands the reality. The one country that can decide Ukraine's fate isn't Europe. It's the United States. And Ukraine also knows something else. A lot of the time, Europe treats Ukraine like a tool. Something to use in negotiations with Washington, something to trade for benefits, something to fight over influence. And what's the result? A whole year of promises: NATO membership, EU membership, support forever. Ukraine is starting to feel like an employee stuck on an endless probation period, doing the hardest work with the weakest guarantees. So now we're seeing a very realistic trend. Ukraine may eventually have to make some level of territorial concessions. And we might even see something like a Donbass free trade zone arrangement. With the U.S. acting like the chairman, Russia and Ukraine both participating in development, and outside investment brought in. Does that sound like corporate restructuring? Exactly. That's what geopolitics really is: turning war into business and business into control. At the same time, the U.S. and Ukraine are also discussing things like zero tariffs for Ukrainian exports to the U.S., which is basically Washington telling Kyiv, stop staring at the EU like it's your only option. We can give you a path too. Now I need to talk about a much more dangerous place, Iran. My view is simple. America will strike. The only question is what form it takes. Because what the U.S. wants most right now is this: control global energy influence and keep the petrodollar system stable. Yes, the U.S. is the world's largest oil exporter. But the Middle East is still the heart of global energy. And right now, a lot of Arab countries have already been locked into the same U.S.-led interest system. So who becomes the biggest problem? Iran. But here's the constraint. The U.S. absolutely cannot afford to sink into another endless war. Trump has said this kind of thing before. America can't repeat the disaster of Vietnam-style or Korea-style long wars that bleed you dry. So if nothing has happened yet, what does that mean? It means the profit sharing and the post-strike arrangements aren't finalized. Once America moves, it signals one thing. The deal is done, the leverage is in place, and the script is written. This is the classic American playbook. Intelligence plus infiltration plus interest trading. If it can be solved at the lowest cost, it won't be solved at the highest cost with brute force. Now let's talk about Canada. A lot of people treat this part like a joke, but I'm telling you don't. Trump recently said if Canada dares to sign certain trade agreements with certain countries, the U.S. could slap Canada with 100% tariffs. People say it's just a threat, but I think this could absolutely happen. Why? Because more than 75% of Canada's exports go to the U.S. You hit them with 100% tariffs? Canada can't absorb that domestically. Some people also say Canada wants to support Greenland, maybe even send troops. Come on, be realistic. Canada's military is tiny, and its security system heavily depends on the U.S. What are they going to do up there? Take photos in the Arctic for PR. Here's the real issue. The U.S. used to have strong demand for Canadian heavy oil. But now America has more options. And look at how the Venezuela card is suddenly back on the table. So Canada is nervous for two reasons. First, if America reshuffles its energy supply chain, Canada could lose market share. Second, if Greenland gets handled, is Canada next in line to get its resources and influence pulled under U.S. control? Full annexation is unlikely, too expensive and too messy to manage. But stepping in to grab control, grab resources, and grab influence, that's very American. Now look at Mexico. Mexico's tone has clearly softened. Stronger crackdowns on drug trafficking, and even considering pausing oil shipments to Cuba. 2 weeks ago, they said they'd keep shipping. Now, they're changing their position. Why? Because more than 80% of Mexico's economy depends on the U.S. If the USMCA framework breaks, Mexico's economy blows up. So here's the reality. Canada might want to resist. Mexico wants to survive. Mexico might even want to negotiate separately with Washington. Hey, forget Canada for a second. Can we just renew our deal first? That's how alliances work. There are levels to it. When things get serious, everyone looks out for themselves first. Now the last point, Japan. Japan reached a consensus with Europe at Davos. They want to accelerate cooperation on rare earths and critical minerals. And they're targeting two places, Africa and Greenland. Surprised? Not even a little. Japan's strategy is pretty clear now. Act low-key, act innocent, act like the victim. But when it comes to global supply chains, minerals, technology, and capital, Japan moves fast and doesn't hesitate. And since the latest U.S. defense strategy talks about strengthening the first island chain, Japan is going to be expected to carry more responsibility. In simple terms, if Japan wants more status, it has to pay more protection fees, and it has to cooperate more with America's military posture. All right, now let's address the counterargument. Some people say, the U.S. is doing all this grabbing and bullying, and the world will see it for what it is. Eventually, it'll backfire. Is that wrong? It's not a crazy argument. But here's my response. Do you really think America only started acting like this today? From the original 13 colonies, the U.S. expanded nonstop, through deals, pressure, taking territory, trading interests, and building power. America didn't turn bad. It's going back to factory settings. For a while, it didn't need to be this aggressive. Now it does. Why? Because tariffs and trade wars alone aren't enough anymore. America realized it could end up in a draw with its biggest strategic competitor. So what's the next move? Go upstream. Territory, energy, resources, minerals, key shipping lanes, military deployments. Use harder control to choke the opponent at the source. And today, America has added one more step. Choosing sides. Washington wants every country to answer one question. Which side are you on? If you don't choose, then tariffs, finance, media pressure, infiltration, and even regime change tools get used to force you into line. Don't get fooled by the surface-level arguing. Allies can fight all day, but once the interests are placed on the table and divided up, a deal gets made. America will say, stop fighting over small money. We've got a bigger opponent to crush. And then everyone ends up back at the same table again. So let's wrap this up. What does all of this mean for the average American? Let me be clear. This is not international news gossip. This affects your gas prices, inflation, job opportunities, defense spending, and even the swings in your 401k. What the U.S. is doing right now is simple. Using military power, resource control, and financial tools to extend its dominance for the next 30 to 50 years. You don't have to like it, but you can't pretend you don't see it. And the real main event coming next is full-scale financial confrontation. The dollar's dominance has to stay intact, which means the U.S. will keep suppressing anything that challenges the dollar-based settlement system. All right, if you think what I said makes sense, or if you disagree and want to go at me hard. Either way, I'll see you in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. We'll keep breaking this chessboard down until you actually understand the game. Our channel is to focus on important financial events in the world, get high investment returns, and post 2 to 3 videos every week. See you in the next issue.